So let's have a chat about Truth Social, Trump's social media company. Have you guys used it?
I do have an account on it, but I can't remember my password.
I've never posted anything. I've just used it to look at his posts.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I haven't signed up myself yet, but anyway, the company is now floated on the stock exchange, so you can buy shares in the Trump Media and Technology Group under the ticker code DJT, and it's kind of got off to quite a good start actually. So look, here's the here's the quote on Yahoo Finance.
The local man can't stop winning.
Yeah, yes. Well, I mean, quite spectacularly, actually, because market cap, $7 billion.
So is that the overall valuation?
Yeah, that's I suppose the most recent shares have been traded at a level that if all shares were sold at that level would get you $7 billion. So whether you could actually realise that is a different thing. But
I'm not saying it's not hypothetical, but
yeah, but I mean, that number is pretty bloody impressive because I mean, if his New York Times, they're also about $7 billion.
Sorry to interrupt the video, but I just want to let you know that we have a brand new selection of merch on our merch store. These won't be in the store forever, so if you do want them, go and get them now. Thanks very much.
So they are, to put it rather mildly, not terribly impressed.
Yeah.
That this has been going on.
Well, proportionate to their operations costs as well. I imagine True Social costs a hell of a lot less to run than the NYT does.
Yeah, that's probably
well. True. I mean, we can have a look at that. So let's just click into the financials here. I will say that as much as I enjoy the sheer win of this, and it is quite a big win, and I'll go into some of the reasons why that's quite a big win, it is a little bit toppy, this valuation. It is a little bit up there. So total revenues at the, presumably this is the point of filing, 4.6 million. Million. Okay. And where have we got? Let's try and find a profit line, shall we? Let's go with EBIT.
Doesn't make any profit.
Well, no, it's minus 1.5.
I mean, it hasn't make any money. Like, is it they're advertisers on it or what?
Presumably.
Well, who the hell's?
Yeah, a little bit of that. So anyway, I can exclusively reveal that the Lotus Eaters is actually more profitable than this £7 billion company. I don't know if that means that we justify
looking at that total expenses of 19 million.
Yes, it is a little bit high, and they've got about 2% user base of Twitter.
Right.
Is the valuation not anticipatory of the idea that he would use this as a press release platform exclusively were he to win the election?
Well, yes, but I mean, I think there's potentially more that he could do on this as well. I just wanted to say though that I love the fact that it's doing well, and I love the fact that it's a total win, and I think there is some value in buying this, mainly for the keks. But as a slight warning to sort of people looking, this is certainly not a traditional sort of level investment. Right. So in its filing, I noted that there was a quote that stood out. It says, at this juncture in its development, Truth Social believes that adhering to traditional key performance indicators such as sign-ups, average revenue per user, ad impression pricing, or active user accounts, including monthly and active daily users, could potentially divert focus from strategic evaluation. So it's not really sort of disclosing a lot of stuff as to sort of what's going on there. Now, the result of that is that this has swiftly become one of the most shorted stocks in America.
Right.
By quite a lot. In fact, it's almost impossible to short at this point because so much of the stock that was available that is available to lend out has already been shorted.
So explain shorting to me, because I'm not a financial guy.
Yeah. So to put it like this, I personally don't short stocks for the same reason that I don't have a pet chimp, because both of them will rip your face off if you get it wrong. So
okay, yeah,
slightly colourful analogy, but think of it like this: if you buy a stock and it goes to zero, the worst case scenario, you lose 100% of your money.
Yeah.
If you short a stock, your losses are unlimited. Well, because it can just keep going up.
What? Like,
yeah.
No, hang on. Explain to me. So if it goes to zero, somehow you lose more money.
So if you go long as stocks, if you buy a stock,
yeah,
the worst thing that you're worried about is that stock going to zero.
Yeah.
right? And in that case, you lose all of your money. You lose 100% of your money, right? But if you're shorting a stock, what you're doing is you're going to somebody who has the stock. You're saying, okay, lend me your stock, and I'll pay you a fee,
Right.
for holding on to your stock, right?
Right.
And then once you've got it, you sell them. And the idea being is that you could then buy those shares back later on because you think they're going to fall. So you can buy them back cheaper, pocket the difference, and give those shares back.
But if the stock goes up, then you've put yourself out of pocket.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing. So if the stock starts to go up, then you then have to, because you've got an obligation, you have to buy those shares back to give them to the people that you borrowed them from. There's a legal obligation there to pay them back. And if they go to, whatever level they're going to go to, you could end up, it could be a lot worse than 100% of your money.
Yes.
Because it could go up 3 times, 4 times.
Understood.
Yeah.
That's a terrible idea.
Yes, it can absolutely eat you alive. Hedge funds like doing it. I don't actually personally mind shorting stocks that are heavily shorted. So, for example, I bought Tesla at about $12 a share, and that was heavily shorted. And I sort of doubled down on it when it was very heavily shorted. And I'm quite into MicroStrategies at the moment, which is another firm which is heavily shorted, and I quite like them because when majority opinion is so far against it, then if the majority is wrong, the upside is fantastic. So I don't mind buying into companies that are heavily shorted, but I would never do the shorting myself because it can tear your arm off. A good example of that would be a blast from the past. Here we go. So Melvin Capital. Do you guys remember the GameStop thing?
I do.
Yeah. So that was GameStop, as we know, a retailer of video games, and basically the Wall Street honchos decided that this thing was never going to be a viable business. And so what they did is they then borrowed a vast amount of stock and shorted it, sold it off, and then the Redditors came swinging into action, noticed this, and basically just kept on buying the stock.
So it kept going up. So the people who shorted it,
yes,
money, right?
and they got seriously into trouble because they had to buy back the stock when that loan agreement was up,
right?
No matter what it was,
right?
So and that makes it worse because not only are these bastards buying the shares and not selling them, you then have to start buying shares. So your own purchase to cover your position then drives those shares even higher.
I can only imagine what the GameStop CEO's day was like that day. So I don't know. The internet's just for some reason.
Let's just plug it in because it was completely mental. Where was it? Actually, Jack, can you stick GME in there? Yeah, hit that. So let's stick this on the 5-year. You might notice a bit of a spike. So basically, these guys were shorting the stock here when it was about $1.
Yeah.
And that proper spike, that would have been when they had to start buying them back. So
sorry, it goes from, what was it, 496 million to 5 billion?
Yes.
Jesus.
That's the sort of thing that can happen. And so Melvin Capital, they were one of the big wigs. So one of the sort of major institutions. Not quite up there with BlackRock, but they're an institutional pension fund manager as opposed to a hedge fund like these guys. Yeah. Anyway, they just torpedoed their fund doing this. Which isn't fun. I did actually buy a little bit of GameStop myself, but I didn't do it because I was expecting to make money, and I didn't. I just did it because I thought it was funny.
Yeah, I lost about $300, but I bought some as well. Just it was funny.
Yeah, it was funny, and that's the thing. You weren't some of the people did obviously make fantastic returns out of that, those who got in early, but most of the people who got in the end, they were just doing it to stick one in the eye of these sort of sneering sort of financial elites. And in fact, there's a funny quote from the Redditors who was sort of we can stay retarded longer than you can stay solvent, which I quite enjoyed. Now, there's a similar sort of logic with sort of Truth Social. I'm thinking that with DJT, Truth Social, I don't think it is worth 7 billion, but people are basically saying that we can stay patriotic longer than you can persecute this man. That's kind of what they're doing because. Okay. If enough people go and buy this stock, given how heavily shorted it is, I'm not giving financial advice. I'm not saying to people to go out and do this, to be very clear. And I am saying that if you do it, you could probably lose money. But if it amuses you to take a bit of money that you could do without, you're going to hurt a hell of a lot of financial sneering elite who also happen to hate Donald Trump, which is potentially setting this up to be another sort of GameStop type situation.
I covered this last week because essentially this has saved Donald Trump's financial position.
Yes.
Of course, he's being screwed by the New York Attorney General.
Yeah.
And this is going to bail him out of that. And so I saw various commentators, financial commentators, saying, look, what this essentially is a measure of Donald Trump's popularity.
Yeah.
And you are right. Like, how patriotic are you is essentially what's being measured by the price of the stock.
I was going to say as well, you can tell that this is the case because the platform is less used by organic users. Because if they're not reporting analytics and user signups and all that, it's because that's not the purpose of the platform. The purpose of the platform is like an imperial decree dissemination metric. And so if they're only there for Trump's imperial decrees, then buying in, they don't care about the functionality of the site. They literally want to read what Trump says and then get off of it. So they don't mind buying in and not even using it because they're just there to support Trump.
Well, and it's just a way to participate, isn't it? Because, you can vote every 4 years, but that's really about as much as you can do. I mean, I suppose you could become a local organizer or something that take up an awful lot of time. But there's not really many ways that you can sort of get actively involved in the meantime. So this is a sort of mechanism that you can sort of get stuck into it. On the point of can he pay his legal bills with it? The slight issue there is that yes, he does own about 60% of the stock, but he's tied in for 6 months.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, is that something you covered?
Yeah, I covered this. He's not going to get the money in time, basically.
Yeah.
So he'd need to get someone to give him a loan until that point.
Yeah, so I mean, potentially the board can free him up to sell some shares beforehand. Normally there was a lock-in on that, but given that the board is made up of his loyalists and people like his son, it's not impossible. They could clear him to free some stock, and they could also free him to borrow against it as well.
Mhm.
So there probably is a way that he can get out of it. My concern about there not being an awful lot of value in there, that is actually also something that he could inject more value into it. Because at the moment, this is just Truth Social. So it is literally just, as you said, is his sort of pronouncements. What he could do is he could put the brand licensing of the Trump brand into it to inject more value. And that is something that I would like to see him do, because then all the royalties from the Trump businesses go into it, and whatever the Trump brand becomes, especially if he gets in for a second term, or perhaps even more powerfully, if he gets robbed for a second time, you can see that brand being worth a lot more, and that's a way of potentially injecting value into this. In fact, it's not wildly dissimilar to an old concept that I heard a lot about when I first joined finance, which was the Bowie bond. I don't know if you ever heard of that. So the Bowie bond was Bowie created this bond and he put his back catalogue into it. And then he sort of, you could then buy a bond linked to that would pay out based on the revenues that came from that.
Oh, right.
And if the bond defaulted, that you would then get that back catalogue. And if it didn't, he would then get it back again. So it's basically an updated version of that. There's lots of things that he could do to try and inject a little bit more value into this, which I think would be very positively. So if that is something that he wanted to do, I think it would be a good way of addressing one of his potential flaws. So I see one of the I don't have many criticisms of Trump, but one of the ones that I do have is that he did not punish his enemies and reward his friends quite enough as he should have done in the first term. There are people like General Flynn and others were probably left a little bit too far out of it.
Roger Stone, Steve
The
Bannon.
January the 6th protesters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean,
Lots of people.
Yeah, and the thing is, all the left ever does, all they ever do is reward their friends. You can think of DEI as basically being a priestly class that they created to transfer money to, and punish their enemies. All they have done is sort of gone after him relentlessly. So I think it'd be great to see them. First of all, he shouldn't have to be paying this bloody legal bill in the first place. It's completely absurd that he is having to do that. But there was a way you could potentially inject a lot more value into it. So, like I say, on on pure financial metrics, I could probably see a valuation for this thing around sort of 2 to 400 million. That said, because the float on it is fairly small, there's not many shares trading, and because there are people who want to be patriotic and support this, there's no particular reason why it couldn't get one of those GameStop spikes and go a lot higher. So be careful if you are thinking about getting into it. Understand that you could lose a lot of money, but it could also hurt a lot of anti-Biden people in the process. So if you're up for that, there is that option. And finally, I'll just close out with this: is what this is really kind of saying is people want an alternative. People are fed up with the corporate media. They're fed up with that top-down sort of sneering approach. People are saying we want alternatives. We want something which is outside of that structure. So for £5 a month, you can support the Lotus Eaters, which is very reasonable, less than the price of a beer if you're in London, and put your money where your mouth is and help alternative media as we bring this fight to our enemies. So.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as Common Sense Crusade with Calvin Robinson. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.